Today I really want to talk to you about the mindset of a hero. The mindset of a hero as we talk about the mighty men of God. So the mindset of a hero, I think, is something really special. It's something really unique. And by the way, just the fact that you guys have all, at some point, and for whatever reason, kind of put your right hand up and said, I will swear to support and defend the Constitution, defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and so on and so forth. You guys, in my book, are heroes. So what the mindset of a hero? I think they have something in common, these heroes. I was doing some Medal of Honor research, and the Medal of Honor was instituted initially in the Civil War, which was huge conflict. Pretty much everybody and their mother served in some capacity in the Civil War. It was right here on our homeland. So almost half of the Medal of Honor recipients come from just the Civil War. But from that day to this, there have only been just over 3,400 Medal of Honor recipients. That's not a lot, considering the tens of thousands, and dare I say even millions, that have served in uniform throughout the last couple hundred years of our nation's history, right? That's not a lot, 3,400 Medal of Honor recipients. But we call these people heroes. And I think that there's something unique about them. There's something unique about their mindset. And this is what I see as a common thread. Is that at some point, these people decided that their life was not dear to themselves. Acts 20:24, one of my life's verses, where Paul says, I don't count my life dear to myself so that I can finish my mission, so that I can do what I'm called to do. And I think that heroes have a similar mindset where they say, at some point, long before they ever got to that moment of decision, I'm that kind of guy that would jump on a grenade. If it comes down to me or my buddy, I'm going to jump on the grenade. And that's kind of as you read through the Medal of Honor citations, it seems like that's almost half of them, is that they hurled themselves on a grenade. They ran into oncoming enemy fire. They selflessly sacrificed themselves with conspicuous gallantry in the face of all this danger, and with complete disregard to you read these things in a citation like this of valor and of bravery, and especially the Medal of Honor. Most of them are awarded posthumously after death, because they gave themselves for a cause higher than themselves, or for their buddy next to them. And so there's this common thread, and I think that's it, that they, at some point, probably long before they got to that moment of decision, decided that they would lay down their lives for somebody else. You kind of guess where I'm going with this? I want to make a parallel today between these heroes, these guys who are willing to pay the ultimate price, to make the ultimate sacrifice for their country, for their core, for their freedom, for their families, for democracy, or for the buddy next to them. These guys are willing to pay that ultimate price. And so in God's army, there are heroes of the faith who are willing to die for their God. They're willing to die for their relationship, their faith with Him. And they're willing to die for the brother or sister next to him. So there's a huge correlation, I think, to be made between those two. And that's what we're going to talk about today with these mighty men of God. So first, I want to kind of define it. Mighty men of God, you find them first talked about, I think it's back in 1 Samuel. You see these mighty men, these men of renown, these men of valor, these mighty men that had almost a supernatural, not almost, but in fact a supernatural ability to kick butt and take names. Can we say that? It's Memorial Day. These guys were rocking it, Old Testament style. I got that? Men who selflessly and supernaturally served God and country, or God and King. Men who selflessly and supernaturally served God and King. I want to, while you're writing that in your notes, just give you a highlight reel of some of these guys. One guy, it says, killed 300 men with a spear. I imagine like the Spartan-style 300, just one after another. Killed 300, piling up bodies all around with a spear. One stood his ground during an attack, a frontal assault. When the rest of his army fled, he stood the ground and turned the whole tide of the battle when the rest of everybody fled. Another 3 guys, I love this one. It says they broke through enemy lines because David said, I wish I could get a drink of water from my hometown back in Bethlehem. I just wish I could go back to my hometown and just have a drink of water. And these 3 guys say, hey guys, let's get together. Let's just break through the enemy lines. Let's just get him a drink of water. He's going to dig that. It's going to boost his morale, welfare, and recreation. It's going to be awesome. So these 3 guys get together. They burst through enemy lines in the Philistine camp. They draw water. I don't know how they did that. Maybe one guy's getting the water and the other two guys are hooking and jabbing. They get the water out of this well and they bring it back to David and they're like, there you go, boss. How'd you like to be one of those guys? Awesome. And it was so impressive to David and so powerful to David. These guys would risk their lives for him to that degree that he actually offered the water as a sacrifice to God and said, God, I don't rate to even drink this water that these men sacrificed their lives for. This is the caliber of men. I'll read you a couple more. It says that another one talks about him who single-handedly took out 300 men in battle. It says that these were ambidextrous warriors. I love that. They could fight with the right hand or the left. Apparently that was a big deal. They had faces like lions. It says that they were swift as gazelles on the mountains. It says the least of them was a match for 100, and the greatest of them was a match for 1,000. These were impressive dudes. These are impressive guys. My favorite, who just so happens to be my kid's namesake, Benaiah. You read about him in 1 Samuel, and then again in 1 Chronicles, you hear his story again. Benaiah, awesome. You're going to see in a minute while we're naming our son Benaiah. This guy, it says that, first of all, he killed a lion. Okay, so people kill lions with their bare hands. That happens. But he killed a lion in a pit. That detail is mentioned in the Holy Scriptures, in the Bible. He killed a lion in a pit, in close quarters, hand-to-hand combat. And not only in a pit, but it was snowing. They threw that in there. He killed a lion in a pit, in the snow, wet. And then it goes on to say that he also killed an Egyptian. Great. Lots of people killed Egyptians. They were tight enemies with Israel, same borders. So he killed an Egyptian. Great. But this Egyptian was 7.5 feet tall. And not only does it say he killed the Egyptian who was 7.5 feet tall, but he killed him by taking a spear out of his own hand, took the dude's spear, and stabbed him with it. Right? That's hardcore. Like, I don't know how tall Benaiah was, but 7.5 feet tall, that's even taller than Chad. That's really tall. So 7.5 feet tall, Chad would have been like this. But Benaiah comes up, gives him that spear, and takes him out with his own spear. That's awesome. So it says that after all this stuff, David says, you're pretty hardcore. I want you to be the head of my bodyguard. So Benaiah ends up becoming the chief of the Secret Service for the king. And then later on, under David's son Solomon, he becomes basically the commander-in-chief of the whole army, the head or the chief of staff for the whole army. Kind of an awesome guy. So that's the little dude that's going to hopefully come out this week. That's his namesake. So this stuff is in the Bible, which I think is awesome because people think the Bible is so boring and old and outdated. And there's some radical stuff in there. I read that even just going over the stuff that I've heard since I was a little boy, I'm like, this dude is awesome. But these guys fought sacrificially and selflessly, supernaturally, empowered by God to do some amazing, amazing things. So here's where I give you a disclaimer. Today is not me telling you, we're going to rally the troops, boys. We're going to take up arms and go kill all the bad guys. Not exactly, but in some ways, yes. In some ways, yes, because this is a spiritual warfare that we are currently engaged in. And I love that I'm preaching this message in uniform because it just makes me want to go fight somebody in the spirit. Amen. So what we're talking about is that a spiritual warfare. It says this in Ephesians 6 that the weapons of our warfare even are not carnal, they're not material, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. So it says we wrestle not against flesh and against blood, but against principalities and powers and of the rulers of the darkness of this age. It's crazy. If you want a book, write this down. This Present Darkness, Frank Peretti. This Present Darkness and Piercing the Darkness is a 2-book series on spiritual warfare that changed my life. It talks about angels and demons, and it tells it from their perspective, almost like a C.S. Lewis Screwtape Letters kind of experience. But he's talking about how angels and demons are engaging in spiritual warfare all around us, and what they're fighting over is not life and death because they're spiritual beings. They can't kill each other. So that's frustrating. Like, die already, come on. And it's just, I don't know what happens to them when they lose in battle. But with the way that this book describes it is that they lose ground. They lose territory. They lose influence in a certain geographical region. And that meshes up with what we read about in Daniel. When Daniel's sitting there, he's praying, he's fasting. And, Michael comes and he gives him the message, or Gabriel comes, gives him the message. And he says, man, if I didn't get relieved by Michael, my brother in arms over here, I wouldn't have been able to come give you this message. And now that I've given it to you, I got to get back in the fight. What are they fighting over? They're not killing each other. Angels and demons, they don't die. So what they're fighting over, I believe Scripture teaches, is us. Is us. Because the enemy knows he's going down, and he wants to take as many of us with him as he can to keep us separated from our God. So this is what we're talking about, guys, is today, the mighty men of God as it relates to spiritual warfare. I want to read this verse from 2 Corinthians 4. I think gives it some really nice perspective. And this is Paul talking. Paul was a hardcore dude. I mean, he was like special forces, for sure, assassin in the kingdom of God. This guy was awesome, taking out people left and right. 2 Corinthians 4, we see a New Testament version of a mighty man of God. In verses 7 through 12, he says this, "We have this treasure," talking about the gospel, "in jars of clay," our corruptible bodies, our mortal bodies. "We have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but we're not crushed. We're perplexed, but we're not driven to despair. We are persecuted, but not forsaken. We are struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus Christ, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies." We're trying to represent, is what he's saying. "For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our mortal flesh." So this is what he's saying in verse 12. "So death is at work in us, but life in you." He says we're getting beat down, but we're not giving up. We're getting knocked around, but we're not out of the fight. We keep going and we keep pushing, even though death is manifesting itself in our bodies, even though death is right there at the door. Death is at work in us so that life can be made available to you. We are ambassadors for Christ. We're representing him in a spiritual warfare, fighting for the moral ground, the moral high ground, if you would, of the lives and the souls of men. That's the stakes of this warfare. That's the battleground, is the soul. That's some heavy stuff right there. So what's the criteria to enlist in this kind of warfare? Jesus set the stakes pretty high. He said this, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." So let me break that down a little bit. Criteria for enlistment. If you want to play this game, deny yourself. I know some of you grammar people might be like, yourself is one word, chaps, and you're going to not forget about that for the rest of the message today. So I did that on purpose, just to annoy certain of you out there that are like, it's one word, no, do it over. Deny yourself. So what is self? Because self is a different word, and yourself is one of those, what do they call it? You put the two words together. Compounds. Yes, thank you for, is it third grade that we learned that? Third, fourth grade? Okay, thank you. So it's been a while. So deny yourself. What is self? It's that consciousness of your own identity. So what is it for you? What is your self? You see what I'm trying to go with that? What is your self? My self says I should be able to have fun and do what I want, right? That's what's natural. What comes natural is I'm hungry. I want to eat. I'm thirsty. I want to drink. I want to go have fun. I'm going to go do what I want. I want to go blow money and be irresponsible. That's self. That's my self. What is your self? Because Jesus says to deny it. I'll give you an example. When I got married, I think that was the first step of denying self. Oh, wow, it's not just one anymore, it's two. And the two shall become one. And oh, snap, it just got real. And Julie would put stuff all around the kitchen where it didn't belong. And she would put clothes and things where they didn't go. And so I had to learn right there to deny self if I wanted to live happy with my wife. And then we had kids. And it got real quick. I was like, okay, sleep, deny self. Okay, we don't get to just go out whenever we want. Okay, we got to save some money for the 8th toy that the baby needs. You know, the babies have the swings and they have the pack and play and they got the bouncy thing in the doorway and it's just stuff everywhere. But you learn. And now that we're having the third, I'm just like, whatever, I got some poop under my fingernails, a little bit of spit up on my shirt, no big deal. I've learned to, in a process of pain, deny self. So what is your self that you need to let go of? That's what we're talking about. That's why there's only less than 3,500 Medal of Honor winners. Because it's not natural, right? To deny self. I'll give you an hour on the weekend. I'll serve the community service project on the weekend as long as it doesn't conflict with the Padres game. As long as it doesn't conflict with the game I got to watch on TV later. But to deny self says, I have no right to do that. I have no needs that I consider more important than your needs. There's nothing about me that says I'm more important than you. So I'm going to deny self, is what Jesus says is the number one thing. Then he says to do this, to take up your cross. Well, we don't crucify people in this country anymore, but unfortunately we're doing it in other parts of the world. But this is a medieval torture that hasn't been around for thousands of years, really. So what is, to us in the Western culture, it's almost lost on us. But this is really what I think Jesus is saying. To have service and sacrifice at the ready. To ask you to take up your cross 2,000 years ago meant to be ready to die. Because what they would have you do, and what they had Jesus did, was take up his cross and go to the place of his own execution. To carry the instrument of his death to his own execution. It's like having a guy who's going up to the firing squad, carry the weapon out there, carry the rounds, and then, here you go, you can shoot me with this. I'll just stand here. I mean, that's crazy. That's a huge ask, to ask you to take up your cross and just be ready. Just be looking for the place where this looks like a good spot to die. That's what Jesus is saying. Deny yourself. What is it about you that you think, with your identity, that you deserve, that you rate, that you're entitled to? Deny that. Take up your instrument of death and just be ready to serve and to... Isn't that powerful imagery that Jesus gets? Go ahead, pick that thing up and follow me, and I'll show you where to put it down. That's profound. That's profound. Take up your cross and be ready. And again, this has to be before we get to that moment, before that moment of decision where you might be called to lay your life down for somebody else. It happens before then. Because I don't think those guys who hurled themselves on a grenade or rushed in front of enemy fire to protect the wounded soldiers behind them, I don't think that in that moment they were weighing the consequences. I don't think that in that moment they were thinking, well, gee whiz, if I get shot, I might die, and I might miss my family back home. And what if it hurts real bad? And what if, my kids and my wife grow up without a husband and a father? These men don't have time to think that. It's a split-second reaction. It's instinct almost, because they had something in their mindset long before that moment that said, I will do that. I'm that guy, I'm that gal, that I will give my life for someone else. And this is what Jesus is saying. If you want to follow me, first, deny self. Second, get that thing ready, because I might just ask you, hey, this is a good spot. Put that thing down. You got to be ready before you get there. And this is how it happens. You guys heard this before, right? Fight like you train like you fight. I love that verse in Psalm 144, so I just put it in your notes, where David is saying, God, you train my hands for war, my fingers for battle. That's awesome. The Bible is, guys, Christianity, it's not about, I talked about this last week, so I'm not going to go there again, but it's not about just being the nice guy or the nice girl, obeying the rules and, being all squared away. God is after your heart, your passion, your love, your life. That's different, right? That's what he's after. So we train in the little things because we need to aim small, miss small. We endure hardness. That's what Paul says to Timothy is, hey, buddy, get ready, endure hardness as a good soldier of Christ Jesus. No man who wars entangles himself in civilian affairs because he's trying to please the one who enlisted him. That's what Paul says, is we got to deny self. We can't, if we want to do well in spiritual warfare, we can't allow ourselves to become entangled with civilian or with things of the world. We got to have a different priority set. Endure hardness. It's not going to be easy. And this is where I was going with that. Training in the little things. And I think anybody in leadership, any NCO, anybody who's led Marines would say that the devil really is in the details. We'll get you PT. We'll get you on the rifle range. That's easy to do, right? The big things. It's in the little things of getting your vehicle registered on base, of getting your uniform squared away, of showing up to work on time, right? These are the things that the junior Marines are struggling with, and some of the senior Marines. It's the little things. So we train in the little things, and this is that idea again of aim small, miss small. So in your time, in your talents, in your treasures, in those things that you have as resources available to you, you train in the little things so that you're ready for those bigger things. I was sitting in a Bible study with a girl over at Battalion. She's a daughter of one of the civilian Marines over there. So we got a few people in the Bible study in the Battalion office, and we're talking about giving, and we're talking about tithing. And Paul's saying, I want you guys to lay up something so that when I come, you'll have it ready to give. And, we're all talking about tithing and whether or not you should tithe, and is that Old Testament or New Testament? And this young lady just says, it's really easy to give if you have something already to give. It's really easy to give if you have something already to give. So she says what she tries to do is save up something so that when she finds an opportunity, it's already there. Here it is, ready to bless you. So I thought that was profound as we talk about training in the little things. We train in the battlefield of the home. We train in the battlefield of being a mom or a dad. I mean, you guys are in close quarters combat, moms with the diapers flying everywhere. You guys are constantly denying self and taking up your cross and dying for others. In the battlefield of the workplace, there's that knucklehead. We all know him. He works with all of us, who just drives you crazy. But here's an opportunity to deny self, to take up your cross, to follow Christ in doing that, to lay down your life for somebody else, to say your life is more important than mine. How can I serve you? And if we don't have that at the ready, guess what? We're going to see that opportunity and say, I wish I had something to give you, but I don't got any cash, right? So if you know they're going to be there, you can prepare for it. But a lot of times we don't get that heads up. So I love this idea of training as a mom, as a father, a husband, or a wife, a child, a brother, a sister. I think that encompasses everyone in here. In the little things. It doesn't have to be you're going to be Billy Graham, so get ready. It doesn't have to be you're going to be Mother Teresa, so get ready. It can be, hey, you're going to be a mom. You're going to be a dad. You're going to be a friend. You're going to be a brother or sister in Christ. Deny yourself, take up your cross, and get ready to follow him. So I got to say this. We have a tough enemy. We do. We have a tough enemy. But the good news is we have a tougher God. And our enemy, it says in 1 Peter 5:8, is a roaring lion. He's roaming about, seeking whom he may devour. That doesn't sound like the little Sunday school flannel graph where you have the little guy with the pitchfork. The devil is our adversary who is on the prowl, looking to see who he can take out. And this makes me think of Animal Planet. Some of you are like, huh? What do you say? Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, you guys seen it with the lion and the little gazelle, and the lion jumps on the thing. And what they're always looking for is the slow one, right? They're looking for the one who's kind of straggling behind the herd, just, the slower wildebeest who's just eating the grass, and all of a sudden the lions pounce on him, and they take that one out. The ones who's kind of the slow one in the herd, right? So you only got to be faster than one other wildebeest, and you'll be good. Survival of the fittest out in the jungle law. But we do have a tough enemy, and I got a video that I kind of wanted to get your attention with and kind of drive this point home, and it's not going to work because my projector has a 2-inch speaker in it. Good lesson learned. I bought a fancy HDMI cable today. So what I wanted to make this point with the wildebeest and the antelope is that sometimes we kind of set ourselves up for failure, right? Because the devil is a tough adversary. He really is. And he will take you out if you're just moseying along, not doing, not paying attention. That's why Paul says, be sober, be vigilant, because your enemy is out there waiting for you. But sometimes we kind of make our own mistakes, don't we? So this video I'll explain to you says, or shows this antelope running, this strong gazelle, running through the African safari. And all of a sudden, whacks his head up on a tree and knocks himself clean unconscious. And on that, thank you for that. And under that tree is, guess what? A couple of lions. And they look at each other like, that works. So sometimes we're running along and we're going great, and we're strong, and we're doing our thing and serving God and serving other people, and all of a sudden, wham, we run straight into that thing. Whatever it is in our life that we come up against that just takes us out. And sometimes the devil's just sitting there waiting. He didn't have to do any work. So don't be one of those people that's always blaming it on the devil. Oh, the devil made me do it. Oh, the enemy is really, he's taking me out. Because sometimes, right? Sometimes it's just me running smack onto trees and I knock myself out. And the devil's just like, okay, I'll take a free meal. So you guys, it says be sober, be vigilant, because we have a tough enemy. But I wanted to read this verse because this is good stuff. It's from Revelation 12, a tougher God. This is kind of how it goes. It says this, and starting in verse 7. A war arose in heaven. Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was defeated. And there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they loved not their lives, even unto death. And if you go on to read that chapter, it talks about the devil being cast down, and he's infuriated. He's outraged that he's been kicked out of heaven, that he's lost his place. So he and all of his fallen angels are roaming about the earth, it says, making war on the saints, accusing them before God. Look at your people down there. They're not following you. This is where you get the story of Job, that he's accusing the brethren day and night in front of God, saying they don't love you, they're not following you. Look, let me go take them out. Let me go destroy them. And so his whole mission is to take you out, to separate you from God. And not just you, but everybody else in the world. And guys, that is what the mighty men of God are engaged in battle against, is a strong enemy, but with a stronger God. And we've already known before the foundation of the world that the victory is God's. He's already declared the end from the beginning. And you see this sometimes in combat. You'll see, the tide has turned. You'll see that victory has swung. The pendulum has swung. The momentum of the battle has shifted, and victory is imminent. It's coming. But it's still dangerous, right? And sometimes that's the most dangerous time, because that's when we get complacent. We're running along, wham! Because we let our guard down for that second. And that's the kind of warfare that we're engaged in, is a battle that is still going on in a war that's already been won. It's profound. But it's the souls of men and women that hang in the balance. So I don't know where you're at today, but I want to say this. What's next for you? You came in here today. It's Memorial Day 2015. Awesome, great, wonderful. Hear a message about mighty men of God, spiritual warfare. So if I throw that back at you, what does that mean for you? What is next for you? As I look around the room, I imagine that so many of you are in different stages of this. You know, some of you are the master gunnery sergeant. You've been around your old salt dog. You're ready to go. Some of you, the commanders, the guys in charge. Some of you, you're just going through boot camp. This is like training day 1. And anywhere in that spectrum, where are you at today, and what are your next steps? So let me ask you these questions to think about. There's a quote that you might be familiar. It says, war is a contest of the wills, right? War is a contest of the wills, which basically means whoever wants it bad enough is going to win. War is a contest of the wills. So let me ask you this. How bad do you want it? Because if you don't want it, you're going to be unprepared. You're going to be caught off guard. You haven't denied yourself, so when you're called to sacrifice, it's really uncomfortable, and you hesitate for a moment, and you've lost that engagement. So how bad do you want it? Question number 1. Question number 2. Are you ready to get in the fight? If you're here today and you haven't signed up, you got to start by getting on the winning side. Start by getting on the winning side. If you're here today and you haven't even signed up yet, this is step 1, is a call to repent. That's what it means to enlist in God's army, is say, yes, I want to be on the winning side. I don't want to be separated from you. Please, God, forgive me of my sins. And it says if we do that, he's faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us of all unrighteousness. And all of a sudden we find ourselves on the winning side by faith through grace. Last question. If you're in here and you're a seasoned veteran in the army of God, and you have the scars to prove it, maybe some of it friendly fire. Sometimes Christians get a little crazy, get a little excited. If maybe you're in here and you're a seasoned veteran with the scars to prove it, are you ready to engage in training the next generation? You know, maybe God doesn't have you on the front line, so to speak, but are you training that next generation? And I'm looking to some of you seasoned veterans in here. Are you training the next generation to fight the good fight of faith? That's where God has you. That's your position. I love these parallels, and I love that I get to preach this message to veterans and to active duty service members, because you try to talk about this warfare and engaging in spiritual warfare with college students when I used to be a college pastor, and they're just like, Yeah, dude, that sounds pretty cool. No offense to you college students out there, but you should probably enlist and do something. So anyways, my dad gave me such a hard time when I enlisted in the Marine Corps. He's like, he was a Navy guy, so yeah, he'd be proud of me now, but he won in the end. They always do, the parents. They always win in the end. So I want to end with this thought. Let's be mighty men and women of God, right? There's a war going on. And on Memorial Day, it's just a fitting time to remember that, to acknowledge that there's a war going on, literally, figuratively, and spiritually. And where are you at in that? Because it just because you don't say it so doesn't mean it isn't so. It's happening. Let's be mighty men and women of God. Let's pray.